Have you ever wondered why some women choose to live alone? Not because they can't find someone, not because their hearts are broken beyond repair, and definitely not because they've given up on love, but because somewhere along the way, they discovered something deeper, something the world often misunderstands. What if I told you that a woman who lives without a partner isn't lonely at all, but powerful in ways most people can't even comprehend? Stay with me, because this isn't just another reflection on solitude. This is about a kind of freedom that unsettles, a kind of clarity that reshapes everything we thought we knew about relationships. And at the end of this video, there's a message that might change how you see love, loneliness, and yourself, so don't click away. Now, before we go any further, I want to ask you something personal. Have you ever had a moment where you chose solitude? Not because it was easier, but because it felt more honest. Maybe it happened after you kept giving and giving, only to be met with silence. Maybe you sat in a quiet room one night realizing that you felt more seen in your own company than you ever had in someone else's arms. If that speaks to you, share your story in the comments. I'd love to hear it, and you never know who else might need to read it too. And if this kind of content resonates with you, if you want more reflections that honor your strength, your silence, and your truth, subscribe to the channel. It helps bring more voices to this conversation, and it tells the algorithm that stories like yours deserve to be heard. Because this isn't about giving up on love, it's about no longer settling for versions of it that make you feel small. And when a woman reaches that point, everything begins to shift. But that awakening doesn't happen overnight. It begins slowly, in silence, and in strength. And that's exactly where we're going next. She didn't wake up one morning and decide she was done with love. No, it was a process. Quiet, gradual, often painful. It began in the small spaces in between disappointments, in the silent realization that something had to change. At first, she thought it was just bad luck, maybe the wrong timing or the wrong person. But over time, a deeper truth emerged. She wasn't being loved, she was being drained. She gave warmth, presence, forgiveness, and in return, received crumbs barely enough to survive on. It took her years to see the pattern, to recognize that what she was calling love was often just a habit of self-abandonment. That's when the silence began. Not the kind born from loneliness, but the kind born from listening to herself for the first time in years. In that silence, she found what no relationship had ever managed to give her: peace. But peace doesn't arrive with fanfare. It comes in small, honest moments, like saying no without guilt, choosing herself without explanation, walking away from empty promises without bitterness. People began to say she was cold, that she changed, that she was too guarded. Now, and they were right, she had changed, but not in the way they thought. She didn't build walls to shut people out. She built boundaries to protect the woman she was finally becoming. This wasn't about pride. It wasn't about proving anything. It was about not losing herself again. And once you've walked through the fire of emotional disappointment and come out whole, you no longer beg to be held. You choose to hold yourself. And from that place, love becomes something entirely different. It's no longer a rescue mission. It's an invitation, a meeting between two people who are already whole, already awake. And most people don't know how to show up like that. Most are still looking to be saved. But this woman, she stopped looking, not out of bitterness, but because she finally understood what it meant to be enough on her own. And in that understanding, something powerful began to rise, something that challenges everything we've been taught to believe about love and control. There's something undeniably unsettling about a woman who doesn't need to be chosen, not because she's arrogant or closed off, but because she has rewritten the script, one that society has rehearsed for centuries. When a woman steps outside the framework of needing a relationship to feel validated, she becomes something most people can't easily define, and what we can't define, we often fear. This is where Carl Jung's concept of the shadow becomes piercingly relevant. The shadow is everything we suppress, deny, or refuse to accept within ourselves. And for many, men and women alike, the self-sufficient woman represents that shadow in living form. She is what others secretly long to be, but are too afraid to embody. Autonomous, grounded, unshakably herself. That's why she triggers reactions that seem disproportionate. People call her intimidating, distant, even unnatural. Some try to fix her, others try to label her. But none of it really touches her, because she knows these reactions are rarely about her. They're reflections of the unresolved within others. Her silence becomes a mirror, showing people all the places they've neglected in themselves. Her independence exposes the fears they haven't faced, the wounds they've tried to cover with noise and company. It's not that she doesn't want love, she just refuses to distort herself to earn it. And that refusal is radical. It dismantles the idea that women must shrink to fit into someone else's expectations. It erodes the myth that her value is tied to her availability, and it reveals a deeper truth. When a woman no longer seeks permission to exist as she is, she becomes powerful in a way the world has never taught us to understand. And so, while the world continues to celebrate surface-level connections and calls it romance, she dives inward, not to escape, but to remember. And in remembering who she truly is, she begins to awaken something ancient, something that lives in every woman but has long been silenced. Until now. She's not looking for a fairy tale, not the kind that ends with someone rescuing her from herself, nor the kind that demands she give up pieces of her soul to keep someone beside her. She's not waiting to be completed, because she already is. What she longs for now is something far more rare, something deeper, reciprocity. Not perfection, not promises carved in stone, just presence. Real, raw, and unwavering. The kind of love she seeks doesn't shrink her. It doesn't ask her to be softer, so someone else can feel stronger. It doesn't whisper manipulation under the guise of romance. It simply meets her where she is, fully, bravely. And perhaps that's why it seems so hard to find, because love like that requires both people to have faced themselves, to have sat in their own silence, acknowledged their own wounds, and chosen to heal not through someone else, but through truth. She no longer chases potential. She no longer invests in the idea of who someone could be someday. She listens closely to who they are now, and more importantly, to how she feels around them. If she senses she has to shrink, edit, perform, she quietly steps away. Not out of judgment, but out of loyalty to herself. The days of begging for attention, bending to be accepted, are gone. She now seeks a love that's willing to grow, to evolve, to hold both light and shadow without flinching. A soul alliance, not a power imbalance. A partnership that allows her to be exactly as she is. No masks, no roles, no cages. And maybe that's why she seems out of reach to some. Because she's not playing a role anymore. She's living her truth. And only those who've done the same inner work will recognize her, not as a mystery to solve, but as a mirror to meet. In this new landscape of love, she doesn't settle. She aligns, and that shift from survival to sovereignty isn't just personal, it's revolutionary. When she enters a room, she doesn't need to announce herself. There's something about her presence, quiet, steady, magnetic, that shifts the air. It's not performance, it's not seduction, it's clarity. The kind of clarity that can only be born through pain, solitude, and deep self-reclamation. People sense it, even if they can't name it. They feel the depth she carries, the storms she's survived, the peace she's cultivated, not by accident, but by choice. She doesn't seek attention anymore, not because she doesn't want to be seen, but because she refuses to be reduced. She doesn't dress her vulnerability up in bitterness. She simply no longer offers it where it won't be held with care. And this confuses people. In a world used to women molding themselves to be liked, her stillness feels like defiance. Her boundaries are mistaken for walls, her discernment for coldness. But what they don't see is what it cost her to get here. They don't see the night she doubted herself, the moment she was tempted to go back to what was familiar but hollow. They don't see the time she chose silence over noise, solitude over comfort, truth over belonging. Her no isn't rejection, it's protection. Her distance isn't arrogance, it's the result of learning over and over again what happens when she ignores her intuition. There's a quiet rebellion in her, one that doesn't fight with swords but with self-respect. She doesn't need to be loud to be powerful. Her energy does the speaking. Her eyes, her tone, her decisions, each one a message. I know who I am now, and I will not abandon her again. That kind of presence disarms people, not because it's aggressive, but because it's honest. In her, there's no more pretending, no more twisting herself to fit, only truth. And the truth is, she's not waiting for anyone to save her. She's walking her path fully awake. And it's on that path that the final transformation takes place, one that doesn't ask for permission, but lives as its own quiet revolution. She's not rushing, not because she's given up, but because she finally understands that real love cannot be forced. It can't be hunted or demanded. It must be recognized. And recognition only happens when both souls are ready, not just to love, but to be fully seen. That's what she's waiting for. Not fantasy, not fireworks, but alignment. A meeting of equals who've walked through fire and returned whole. Her journey hasn't been easy. It's been raw, relentless, and deeply real. She's cried in, silence questioned her worth, nearly went back to what broke her more than once. But each time something inside her said, not again, not this way, not anymore. That voice became stronger, not louder, just steadier. And now, it guides her. Every step. It's the voice of self-respect, of hard-won clarity, of a soul that's no longer afraid to walk alone if it means staying whole. This isn't bitterness. It's maturity. She still wants love. She still longs to be chosen, held, understood. But not at the cost of herself. Never again. Because she's tasted the emptiness of relationships built on need, on fear, on pretending. And she would rather walk alone than dim her light for someone who cannot meet her in the dark. Carl Jung once said, "The tree that reaches to heaven must have roots that go down to hell." And she knows what that means now. Not in theory, but in flesh and bone. She's faced her personal hell, abandonment, conditioning, inherited pain, trauma passed down like tradition. She broke the cycle, and in doing so she stepped into something sacred. She no longer tries to earn love, she embodies it. Her presence, her peace, her power, they're not an act of rebellion. They are the natural outcome of a woman who has chosen herself again and again. And from that choice, a new kind of love will one day emerge. One that doesn't rescue her but celebrates her. One that doesn't fill a void but overflows with meaning. If this story touched something in you, perhaps it's because a part of you recognizes it, not as someone else's tale but as your own reflection. And if that's true, then don't keep it to yourself. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment below. Subscribe to this channel, not out of habit, but because something in you knows. This is what real love sounds like. And as promised, here's the message I said you'd find at the end. You are not behind, you are not broken, and you are not hard to love. You are simply becoming the woman who no longer settles, and that in itself is a revolution.